It's epilogue time. It's Sunday, 1 week since I started this whole thing with emails and texts and running around trying to get measurements and things like that. I am in yoga pants, a Cthulhu Palooza t-shirt, and I'm feeling it. Sewing and fluffing around all this fabric, tearing apart squares for masks and also for the robes. I have noticed that I've been sneezing more often. I don't think I'm actually sick, but there's a ton of dust in the air. So if you're sensitive to dust and you're doing a lot of sewing, you're probably going to be in for a sneeze fest. This mask was actually a really good project. If you don't have a sewing machine, you can do this all hand stitching. You can hand stitch everything on here. You don't have to do a zigzag stitch. In fact, doing it as a hand stitch, make sure that you're going through all the different layers. So if you don't have a sewing machine, you can definitely do the face mask. I've done ties on mine because I was completely out of elastic. And I say was, I technically still am. A lot of people have run out of elastic. I raided through my things and I found that I did have some underwear elastic for like intimate things, but that's all the elastic that I have left. So that's why I have continued going with the double fold tape. If you feel like you need to do the elastic things, there's some people that are using hair bands. How these work is you stitch them, I'm not quite sure if it's up the top or maybe two of them, and then the hair bands go around the ear, pitch behind the ear like that, and then attach the mask. I think it's two of them per side. The problem with that is this is pulling on the nurses and doctors' ears the whole time, and some nurses and doctors have found that that's actually kind of painful. To solve that problem of pulling on the ears, people are taking headbands and they're stitching a button on either side, two buttons, one on each side, and then the hair tie hooks around that instead of the ear. But that's an additional project. You can also use grosgrain ribbon. It's got ribbing on it instead of being smooth and satiny. The satin ribbons, they'll slip around. This one catches nicely in the hair, and you can also wrap this around and stitch it down to make good ties. We've gotten some donations, a partial package and a whole package of bias tape. That's all we got. So we've also gotten some twill tape of various different kinds. This can also just be wrapped around and stitched down on top because it doesn't have an edge to fray. And we've also gotten a lot of shoelaces and ribbon. If it's really thin, it's good for a tie, but if it's the slightly wider stuff, you can do the wrapping around the edge with it. I ended up with this, which I thought, oh, is this elastic? No, it's just another braid trim. I think this is for curtains, doing Roman shades, I think. Those are all options if you've got curtain making supplies or costume making supplies. There's a lot of things there. When it comes to filter fabric, I wanted to say, hey, crafting felt. There is a kindergarten teacher out there, a crafter out there, who realizes that their stash is totally usable. I've been running through a lot of thread. I would say I've gone through 10 spools of thread. If you are a quilter, you might have a rotary cutter and a rotary cutting mat, and that will make doing this trim easier, but there's other things you can do. I found that ruffle trim. My mother sent me an email talking about snaps and hooks and things like that, and she mentioned that the ones that I used, that I hammered in, that have those prongs, those are actually pushing through the fabric and making little tiny holes, which could be a stress point that could later rip out. She suggested that maybe I put those onto some twill tape or onto the double fold tape that goes around the neck. Doing individual hand stitch ones also works, but I'm a costumer and I have snap tape. Snap tape allows you to do quick costume changes, and it's just two pieces of usually grosgrain ribbon or twill tape that happen to have a series of snaps already spaced out about 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch apart. So I'm going to be using a lot of that because I happen to have it, because it's super easy, already made. It's got these 2 parts. Excuse me while I pause the camera. It's as easy as that. Just sew each piece onto each side. So you know what? That's probably going to be my solution for the cuffs, for the neckline. When I don't have elastic, I'm going to be going to my snap tape, because as a costumer, I have a bunch of it. If you don't happen to have this, go with my mom's suggestion of getting some twill tape or some grosgrain ribbon, attach the snaps to that, and then attach that to the neckline, because then if they rip out, it's just a quick repair instead of the whole garment gets torn apart. For the nose bridge, you can go to your box of assorted lengths of wire, but you got to be careful about what you're choosing. Some wires just do not hold a shape, so those won't be any good. Some are too thick and sturdy. Those won't be any good. You're looking for something that can lightly hold its shape, but isn't so stiff that it's really going to hurt them. Floral wire, I find, is pretty good. It takes a nice shape. I have this wire. I don't know what it was originally from, but it will make a nice shape. Bending back the edges so that it doesn't stab through the edge of the mask is going to be important. That's going to be in the instruction sheet. If you don't have wire, just skip it and make the mask anyway. It's better than nothing. Instead of trying to build one mask at a time, what I like to do is I get all of my exterior squares cut. I cut a bunch of filter fabric, then I cut lining fabric, strips and strips and strips, and then I do a whole bunch of one step at a time. So I will match up a bunch of fronts, a bunch of backs, and a bunch of interfacing. Get those stitched together in a pile and then pleated in a pile. After I've got that pile built up, I'll move over to doing the strap, kind of like an assembly line. Instead of trying to make one perfect one at a time, we're not going for perfect, we're going for fast. If you have a serger, you can do a little cheat technique. Instead of having to do the double fold, you can actually just stitch down the serged edge, fold it around over to the back side, and then top stitch it down again, and you'll just have the serged edge on the inside. That's okay because it's not going to fray, and then you finish stitching that way. The only reason why you need the double fold is if you've got raw cut edges, because those will fray. I'm going to demonstrate the rip technique really quickly on this already cut up piece. If you're trying to get something that's straight on the grain so that you have nice right degree angles with your selvage edge, take a little snip inside, hold it down, welcome to my slippered feet, just tear it. You may have noticed me doing this in the robe video. There we go. It does leave little stringies. You're going to have to clean those up, but instead of having your scissors making a wobbly line, that gives you a nice straight edge. I talked about how with the masks you wanted a very tight weave fabric. When it comes to the robes, to the gowns, really those are just sort of splash protectors. They're taking them off after every patient and throwing them through a heavy wash. So those things, just make them out of something. People are using tablecloths, bed sheets, curtains, shower curtains. I've been donated some interesting stuff, including this fabric that has all these weird cuts and holes and even staples in it. I'm still going to use this. What I'm going to be doing with some of the light fabrics that I've been getting is these are going to be the backs of gowns where it needs to be less sturdy because it's going to be double layered in the back. Remember this black bed sheet that has somewhere in it a piece of duct tape? Yeah, I'm going to end up using this probably as the backs of gowns. All sorts of different fabric to make these things. So whatever you can do, something is better than nothing. Get on an email list. Get in touch with your local sewer community. You can share threads. You can share sewing needles. You can share notions, share snaps, share elastic, share bias tape, share fabric. That's how we can do this. Maybe you've run out of things. Maybe you don't have a working sewing machine, but you know how to sew. Maybe you've never sewn before, but grandma's sewing machine is sitting in a corner. You can get those supplies to people who can use them. You can also draft your family into this. Maybe your kids are too young to handle one of the machines, but they can probably be cutting 8x8 squares and things like that. Different hospitals are needing different things. Some hospitals are just using these masks to cover their actual filter masks. Other hospitals, they're completely out of filters entirely. So yeah, just find out what's necessary in your local area. Usually if you call up and say, hey, I'm wanting to sew masks, what can you use? They will tell you. They really do appreciate anything that you can do. You know, whether your hospital wants you to use elastic, some hospitals are using bleach, and the bleach destroys the rubber that is inside the elastic. So those hospitals, they may prefer ties. Other hospitals, they just want them easy to put on, so they do want the elastic. So just figure out what your local area needs. Usually there's a volunteer coordinator at every hospital. Just call, say that you're volunteering to do some sewing. They will forward you on to the right person. Someone saw me out on my errands wearing one of my masks, and they asked me if I made it myself, and that was great. I've had many people find out that I'm making masks and want to know if I made them myself or if somebody else made them for me. One individual, when he found out that I was making masks, he asked me if I could make him a mask. I said, you know what, I don't have time for that because I'm making for the hospital, some nursing care homes, and a food bank. So I don't have time to make one for you, but I've got this pattern and this PDF, and you can download it online and you can do it yourself. And I was told, I can't do it. I'm not artistic. I'm sure that he would be unsatisfied if he were to get a strawberry shortcake mask. He would want to choose his favorite fabric. And then if it wasn't done perfectly, it wouldn't be artistic enough for him. I'm not making perfect masks. It's just going to be whatever it is. If you're making these for your family, you can take the time to make them look pretty and nice and gorgeous. But if you're making them for the hospitals, just do it. If you're waiting for the perfect equipment or the perfect time or the perfect material, stop waiting. Just do it. Just do it. Instead of a throne of swords, I have a throne of fabric. I'm going to sit down in it. Yesterday, I had to take a break. It was Saturday, and I decided that I needed to take some time for myself to do things like shower, do my own laundry, vacuum my floors, clean my kitchen sink, scrub my toilets. I know that doesn't sound like a real break, but I needed to take a little bit of time for me. I made a couple of someday projects. I had all of the supplies. I maybe even had them halfway finished in a UFO unfinished object sort of way. I managed to finish up 2 skirts that I'd been wanting to do. One was denim and one was kind of a circle skirt. Really happy with how those turned out. And then after that, I ended up serging a bunch of strips of fabric to make straps for more masks and ties for more gowns because I couldn't help myself. But I did need those couple hours of just cleaning my house, doing projects for myself, and then I was able to go back to it refreshed. If you are a nurse or doctor or healthcare provider, you are right now totally focused everything on coronavirus and helping people through this COVID-19 pandemic. And then if you come home and you're worried about making a bunch of masks and gowns to supply yourself and your coworkers with protective garments, you could be on the edge of burning out. You need to spend just a little bit of time for yourself. So remember, get outside. Sometimes the weather is beautiful out there. Say hi to your family. Maybe eat a meal with them. I mean, you're all stuck in here together. And take a little bit of time to do your own personal maintenance. Don't focus just on making the gowns and masks, because if you do that, you'll burn out and it'll stop being fun. You don't have to be perfect at making them. We're not making perfect stuff here. We just want to do good. Oh, what else was there? Oh, and I'm just barely started. And if you're running out of things, luckily I have a huge supply. You can ask for supplies if you could use them, and everything will get figured out. You can make more things that way.